But I think now is the time to bring this stuff out of the cupboard. It's important that the world realises that since the 1990s, people have been working on this. We have worked out a formula, really. And things like biological weapons research, no, they're not allowed in this by the document. That's a no-no, right? Then we have, in 97, a couple of years later, we had the Edinburgh Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, CHOGM it's called, up in Scotland, and I went up to it. And it was a really moving occasion, because I'm Canadian as well as British, so I love the Commonwealth. I think the Commonwealth is still important. 53 nations, India's part of it, Pakistan, Mauritius, many, many big and small nations, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, etc. And we don't have an interfaith forum. So being young and foolish, I said, well, let's set one up. And because I'd met the Duke of Edinburgh and because I'd been at St James's Palace meeting all these interfaith leaders, I thought, well, if not me, who? And I set it up at New College at the University of Edinburgh. And we had a fantastic gathering with people coming from, because they were all coming to the CHOGM and the NGO bit of that, there were people from South Africa, from India, from all over, from African countries, who came to our conference. And we set up this Commonwealth Interfaith Forum, which is still going. Meanwhile, the official heads of government issued a declaration called Promoting Shared Prosperity, the text of which I give here in full. But unfortunately, they only gave kind of lip service to the intellectual, spiritual part of the Commonwealth's work, which I think is sad. It's a bit like the Queen's message the other day about the virus. She slipped in the let's do some meditation and prayer. But it's almost as if she's embarrassed to talk about the spiritual dimension, even though she's the head of one of the most important faith groups in the Commonwealth, the Church of England, the Anglican Communion. I think she should be a bit more upfront about the need for interfaith peace work. And I don't know who taught her RE, at school, but I know that her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, is incredibly committed to interfaith education. So I don't know why the official Commonwealth isn't better at this, but it's been getting better. But anyway, in 97 I set up that Commonwealth Interfaith Forum, and the details are all here in the book. Then we had, the next year, in Ireland, something incredibly important. That year in 97 I went to Ireland and took part in an interfaith service. Well, it was a Druid peace service, really, at Tara. And we did prayers for peace. I went to educational conferences for peace because I'm part Irish. I feel deeply about the need to end that silly conflict that's been going on in Ireland. I'm a Protestant Catholic, as I tell people. I have the right to protest, but I have the right to universality as well. I'm a Protestant Catholic. And why can't we all be? Why do we have to fight over who's Protestant and who's Catholic? It's like my right arm fighting my left arm. So the Good Friday Agreement happened in 98, and I give the whole text here. Again, most people haven't read this thing. This is the very basis on which we ended the time of troubles in Ireland, and it's a really important document to read and study. And it's what's endangered by Brexit. This is one of the reasons I've been so bitterly opposed to the Brexit nonsense promulgated by the right wing in Britain, who are brain dead. They are not educated into morality, and they're mostly funded by offshore bigots and fanatics who saw the potential of destroying, peace in Britain. Well, that's great. That will serve the interests of dark forces that want to, break up the UK and cause fighting. Only people of low intellect would do that. And that's what we've got. The crop of people behind Brexit were, they wouldn't be able to understand these treaties if they actually, they'd never read my book. They wouldn't be able to understand it if they did. They have no moral intelligence, which, as Kant pointed out, is is the fundamental basis of the Enlightenment. We are disentangling the Enlightenment. You see, 1707 was the time of the Enlightenment. That's when hopes were up that we would get an intelligent planet. Britain and England and Scotland and Wales came together as an Enlightenment country to try and pioneer that. It was the time when Newton was around and Queen Anne was on the throne, and there was a hope in the air that we would get an enlightened world. Well, we seem to be going rapidly down the rabbit hole of unenlightenment, and I'm 100% opposed to that, with Kant and with all the philosophers of Britain during the Enlightenment epoch, which gave us, you know, they did their thinking, and what they all said is peace is the absolute central basis for prosperity. And so that's why the Good Friday Agreement was so long in coming, but so precious to safeguard. And I would, yeah. So anyway, I give the text, there it is, read it. Then in '98 there was a conference of philosophers globally. The World Congress of Philosophy took place in Boston that year. I didn't go, but I wrote a declaration because I was coordinator of Philosophers of Peace, and so it went to colleagues who were there in Boston, a city I have visited and know and love well. It's home to Harvard nearby and MIT and places, and Chomsky lives nearby. It's a great city. It's where Dr. Martin Luther King did his doctorate, actually, Boston University. So I give that declaration. Then we come to 1999, the next year, and I give something called the Sirte Declaration, which probably you've never heard of. Sirte is a town in Libya, in Africa, and this is the time when Gaddafi was in charge of Libya, before the total meltdown, and he organised basically a big conference of the African leaders who issued the Sirte Declaration, which led to the formation of the African Union, which is very, very important. It's like the European Union for Africa. And it came out of this declaration in 1999. Now, these are visionary people. Mandela was involved, and the leaders of all the different African nations came to Sirte, hosted by Gaddafi, who was, whatever you want to say about Gaddafi, he was an intelligent man, committed to peace. He was a Muslim, but he recognised Africa has many religions, many traditional animists and Christians, and they should all live in harmony. And the wording of that declaration is very interesting. Anyone that loves Africa, should read that declaration. And one of the crucial things the African Union has done is it's created structures for peacemaking, and they've been trying to solve the civil wars, the conflicts in Africa ever since, and they're still doing it. That, I think, is Gaddafi's greatest legacy to humanity. The poor man eventually became a victim of total machinations in dark places, and he ended up being killed in a civil war that should have been mediated. Instead, the West got involved. We started bombing one faction, and we intervened militarily through NATO. I mean, that was stupid. You see, if the West was to truly live up to our universalist Enlightenment heritage, if Kant was the president of Europe, we would have sent in mediation teams to help our brothers and sisters out in Libya, which is, a very sacred part of Mediterranean culture. It's used to be part of, it's part of the Roman Empire. It has its own history, and so no way should we have been stirring the nest and making it worse. The only people that benefit from that are the arms dealers and the agents of chaos and destruction, the Steve Bannon types who wander about the world creating chaos and maelstroms. Anyway, poor old Gaddafi, this was his great achievement, the African Union, and it was founded here in Sirte in 1999. Now, most people don't know about all this. I've given the declaration in full. Then we have the UN Declaration of the Culture of Peace in 1999, which I give, which is very important. And the same year, in Amman, in Jordan, there was the next conference of the Assembly of Religions for Peace. I didn't go to this one, but I was there in spirit, and its declaration is great. The Jordanian monarchy are totally behind interfaith work, and I know they're very close to Prince Charles. There's a close toing and froing. and we'll see them come up a little further on, but the Crown Prince Hassan is probably the Muslim world's greatest interfaith expert from an Islamic perspective, because he's read his Quran, as have I, and he knows that the Quran is a blueprint for peacemaking. The Jordanian monarchy are descended from Muhammad. You know, they have in their genes the intelligence of Muhammad, who was a great mediator. Yes, he would fight if you attacked him. Yes, the Meccans stupidly tried to defeat him militarily by attacking Medina. And he said, yes, if you're attacked, you have the right to self-defense. But always, if they stop fighting, you stop fighting. You don't ruthlessly pursue. And also, there are rules to warfare. You don't poison wells, you don't kill the women, you know, etc. And so that peace vision is essential to the Jordanian monarchy. And that's why they hosted this great conference in 1999. The next year, 2000, there was a wonderful ceremony in The Hague, Netherlands, at the Peace Palace, where something called the Earth Charter was signed. And this is a very important declaration. The Queen of the Queen of Holland was signing it, along with other world leaders. The Earth Charter had been written by Gorbachev, who since stepping down as Soviet president had become the founder of the Green Cross International, which was like the Red Cross for nature. And he pioneered with Maurice Strong, a Canadian expert in environment, a process which led finally to the writing and the promulgation of the Earth Charter, which basically says that the environment has rights. Humanity, you know, we're not the lords of creation, we're the custodians, stewards of creation. Animals have rights, trees, rivers. The whole ecosphere is one being, and we need to take our duty as custodians of all that seriously. This Earth Charter has a huge section on peace and non-violence, because it's very bad news for the environment if we go to war, us humans. It's very naughty, especially with modern weapons and nuclear weapons and so on. Very bad news. So we have an environmental obligation to make peace. Later that year, there was the UN Millennium Declaration in New York in September, which was, because this was the millennial year, again, a visionary document, which I've given in full. And the European Union issued an amazing document in 2000 called the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, which most, certainly British people, have never heard of, let alone read. And it's absolutely central to the European Union's mission. It guarantees rights, freedom of speech, assembly, all the kind of normal rights, but it also guarantees social rights, unemployment, help, all kinds of, like social development rights are guaranteed in the European Union. And so this is a visionary document issued during the millennium year, which is why I think it's so stupid of the UK to have left the European Union. It's like such an aggressive step. We've been seduced by the military nincompoops who swan about causing trouble, the black princes of our time. Then we had in 2002 the Arab Peace Initiative, promulgated by many Arab states through the Arab League. This is a very important declaration, which was giving the Arab and Islamic view on how we can get peace between Israel and Palestine. Because by then the Oslo peace accords had not been adhered to by Israel. Rabin had been assassinated. The Israeli government had stopped, wanting peace even. And so the Arabs thought, we'll revive it, and this is our suggestion. It was a blueprint. And it was a very important document. It needs to be read still. Then we come to an important gathering in Rhodes in 2003, which was issued a declaration on the dialogue of civilizations for a humane order. And by now we've had 9/11 in 2001, and we're having the invasion of Iraq by US and UK, tearing up the UN rulebook, tearing up all these peace declarations. and just charging in to destroy a sovereign state as if it's their right. I mean, you know, the cowboys, sorry, this is the gangsters have taken over the town, and the sheriff has been shot. I mean, complete ignoring of international law in that invasion of Iraq. There was no proper investigation of 9/11. There was just a sort of rapid publishing of a Bush thing. Yes, this is Al Qaeda. This is all this nasty Bin Laden guy. Let's go attack Iraq. I mean, talk about anti-intellectuals. These people, it's as if they deliberately can't think straight. Maybe that's why they're elected as politicians, because they are third-rate people who can't string two sentences together and can't entertain 3 or 4 ideas in their mind at once. And what they did was completely illegal. And even now we're still having to unravel the chaos falling from 9/11. I've published a large book of inquiry historically into this, and I'm launching an International Historical Commission into 9/11 later this year. And so it's, you know, crazy. But this meeting took place in Rhodes, and these were highly competent intellectuals, philosophers, people looking critically at what the West was doing. And they were saying, this is bonkers, these people have gone mad. And we've got to have a dialogue about what kind of world society we want. It has to be responsible. And people came from Petersburg, from Russia, from all over, Hungary, you know, Austria. Some amazing thinkers came together and issued this brilliant declaration, and also from the Middle East. People lamenting this breakdown of values that was represented by the response to 9/11 and the 2003 invasions of Iraq. That was like the train, you know, coming off the tracks from the point of view of the Rhodes Forum. Now, I know about it because I've travelled widely in Eastern Europe, and my degree was on the history of the whole of Europe, including the East, and I studied at the School of Slavonic and East European Studies. So, and my PhD was on this problem. In fact, I'd been researching for my PhD all this time. Going to these conferences and so on was like research material for my thesis. Then we had a very important document, the Aman Declaration in 2004, and this was back in Jordan, visionary, and it was the combined intellectuals of the Islamic world saying we must make sure that we get the right kind of Islam. We have to come together as Muslims, not demonize each other, not, you know, Shia Sunni splits and all this nonsense. We have to have a true understanding of what the Prophet was actually trying to do, which was to build peace on the planet through faith, through a common faith, a common understanding of the divine unity, which he called Allah, what we call it God. But there is such a thing. There actually is a unity underlying everything. And if only each one of us could plug into that in our own way, however it works for you, find that inner peace, make that inner surrender to that absolute, and we all did that, all 7 billion of us on the planet, then there would be peace also through our institutions, our diplomats and so on. Because, you know, when I talk about this idea of interfaith peacemaking at the inter-life level, as I said in my questions to the Janes, I also think we can have that experience here and now in incarnation. We don't have to wait till we die. I think the quality of inter-life education should be improved so that, you know, people have to sign a commitment not to make wars and stuff and cause trouble when they incarnate into a human body. But I also think that we humans have to make that commitment too. Now that was Muhammad's vision in his own way. He wasn't an intellectual Muhammad. He wasn't a learned man. He could hardly even read and write. But he was an inspired visionary prophet who got the downloads intuitively. And that's what the Quran is. It's a whole collection of visionary, amazing downloads, we would say. And that's why I've done a commentary on it. I've been working for the last 5 years on and off on this really detailed commentary, line by line. It's part of my gift to humanity, because there's like 1 billion Muslims on the planet, not all of whom have really got this message about the Quran being a peace document. But the Aman Declaration did. They know this in Jordan. And my commentary is also for the non-Muslims on the planet, some of whom are very afraid of Islam. Some of the warriors, the Steve Bannons and co., what they want is war with Islam. The people that invaded Iraq, they had this whole false narrative that Muslim extremists had done 9/11 when it was probably, they were led on by other forces, as the research is now showing. But they created this sort of bugbear of Islamic terrorists, and then having actually helped create it. It was the CIA that created Al-Qaeda to help bring down the Soviet Union. I mean, it's like a little child making in their minds all these monsters and things and then being afraid of them. It's very silly. So anyway, the Aman Declaration, very important. And then there was the next thing, was in 2006, World Conference on Religion and Peace, again, the 8th World Assembly, this time in Kyoto, in Japan. Lots of Japanese Buddhists, Rishokoso Kai and other great Buddhist groups were active in this group. I met many of them. And I didn't go to that conference, but the declaration is still very important, worth reading. Then there was an important declaration at Coventry Cathedral in 2006, the Charter of Religious Communities for Nonviolence Against Children. This is important because children in our world, tragically, are often the subject of violence. They're beaten up in their homes, they're bullied, etc. And there's a lot of sort of sexual violence and exploitation going on, apparently. And so children have the right to live lives of peace and not to be... Also, there's the problem of child soldiers now. Kids are being forced to go and fight because they can fire weapons and their lives are seen as expendable. So anyway, this was an important gathering at Coventry Cathedral in England, where my ancestors, the Dafferns, come from. And one of my great-great-grandfathers was mayor of Coventry, so it was an honour that we hosted that at the cathedral. Then there was a conference in Rio de Janeiro, which I've also given, on the World Congress Against the Sexual Exploitation of Children. Again, there are some pathologues who think that paedophilia and violence are really exciting. And this declaration was saying that these people are bonkers and need stopping. And it's, the swamp needs cleaning up, really. These are the declarations to do it. Then there was the declaration on a common word between us and you, on Islamic Christian peace through understanding, again in Amman, which is an amazing centre for this work, in 2007. And this was a very important declaration. It arose because the Pope made some comments, Pope Benedict, which were interpreted in such a way that he was trying to restart the Middle Ages and the Crusades. He wasn't, but being an intellectual, he didn't really realise what the impact of his words might be. And so some Islamic intellectuals got together and said, yeah, we don't want a crusade, thank you. We don't want to restart the wars, notwithstanding what you've been trying to do in 2003 and onwards. What we want is to realise that there's so much in common between the Christian scriptures, the New Testament, and the Muslim Quran. They're like saying the same message, and it's a common word, was what the language used. And therefore, by emphasising the common word, so every Muslim student training to be an imam or something should also read the New Testament and learn, according to this text, the similarities. I mean, Muslims and Christians all agree Jesus was an incredibly important chap, inspired, gifted, a prophet even, and also they agree he was the Messiah. So what's there not to agree about, So let's emphasise the common stuff. The other stuff we can debate in the appropriate context, and yes, there are differences, but let's focus on the commonalities. So this document was a historic document, and it was adopted by many, many Muslim scholars around the world. It's called the Common Word. At the University of Cambridge it was adopted, and many great theologians are still working with this. And in a sense that's what's inspired and informed my commentary on the Quran. Trying to tease out the commonalities. There are many passages in the Quran that show very strong evidence of having been inspired by Christian Gnosticism, which was a type of Christianity that was hounded out of the official bureaucracy. You see, there are certain people that make religions into a bureaucracy, a sort of business. And unfortunately, I'm sorry to have to say this, but in Byzantium, they were epic at bureaucracies. Like Kafka's trial, when he can't deal with the bureaucracy, or the castle. He can't ever get into the castle because of the bureaucrats. That's the Byzantine Church. That's the Catholic Church to some extent. Although I've experienced it's really liberalised and much better nowadays. But in its heyday, it was like that. And so that's why Muhammad said, the Quran said, okay, let's just start again. Let's have like one God, one faith, one peace. Very simple. And that's, anyway, this document is brilliant. Read it. I give the whole thing here. Then there was in 2009 a thing called the Charter for Compassion, which was another very important project saying let's have compassion on the planet. Let's make that our focus. And Karen Armstrong was involved in that, and it's still going. You know, they're very good people. Then in 2013 there was a Charter of the Commonwealth in London. Again, I don't know who's read this, but as a Commonwealth fan and a Canadian, I love this document. The Queen signed it, a big thing in Marlborough House, I think. And it commits the Commonwealth to peace. You know, of course we should be a peace-loving 53-nation bloc. And I come up with that at the end. I make a point about that. What I basically say is that if all Commonwealth nations formally signed a non-violence treaty, that no Commonwealth nation would ever, under any circumstance, attack another Commonwealth nation. So we become a peace bloc. That would solve a lot of problems on the planet. Also, I argue that the Commonwealth should sign that with all European nations. So Britain as well. There should be a non-violence treaty. We would never attack, any other Commonwealth state or any European state. And others are welcome to sign that too. So if America wants to sign that or whatever, they would pledge never to attack Canada under any circumstances, or any other Commonwealth country, including the whole UK. You know, job done, simple. If we do that, I think we've got world peace pretty much sewn up. And then if countries do start attacking any of us, then that's not very good. And we would reserve the right for self-defence. Anyway, Charter of the Commonwealth, read it, it's great. Then we come to the Vienna Declaration, the 9th World Assembly in 2013 of Religions for Peace. I know Vienna well, I love it, great city, but I wasn't at that conference, but I've given the text. However, next year I went to Jaipur in 2014, and we had the 8th International Conference on Peace and Nonviolent Action, which I was attending. And again, I was asked to write the declaration, so I've given it in full. And it was interesting, we went to Bikaner, which is where this wonderful man, Acharya Tulsi, was cremated. And we went to the the meditation area where that event happened, and it's a very amazing place. And when I was sitting there in meditation with the rest, some petals of some beautiful red flower blew into my hands. And this gave me an insight, because I knew I was asked to write the declaration, and how on earth can I summarise this amazing conference? And I saw with these petals that I could do it in the form of a 9-petaled flower of peace. And each petal would be like one of the features of peace. And that, let me just get the book, I'll just show you. Okay, so this is what it looked like. A dear friend of mine later made a kind of diagram of it, but those are the 9 petals, and each one is a different feature of peace. And the central, the stable as it were, is peace and non-violence. And then, for instance, peace in the family, peace in health, peace in social affairs, and so on. They all come out. And so the document was written in such a way that it would fit on the 9 petals. But I did lots of footnotes to it, and I give them in the book. So that was my offering to the memory of Achara Tulsi and the whole work, really. It's ongoing. By the way, this is the book I said I did for Lama Gangchen, A Solution for the Third Millennium, whose sad death happened last night. Bless him. I'm sure he's going to be in charge of inter-life peace education for a while, or at least helping with it. Yeah. Right, so then the next thing is I went back to India in 2015. I was invited through the International Peace Bureau, actually, the main body of international peace activists, to go to this thing called the Grand Global Peace Meet, which was taking place in Hyderabad, Chennai, and Bangalore in 2015. And this was a great event I went to, meeting, and lo and behold, I walked in and I met up with loads of old friends of mine who were there. Professor Glenn Martin was there from the States, and Professor Chumakov from Russia. And we all, got down to work and issued eventually this declaration, which I've given the text of. Because the three of us were involved with International Philosophers of Peace, I also issued a separate declaration from that body, which I've given the text of. Now, one of the colleagues who was there was an interesting Russian guy, Igor Kondrashin, a Russian intellectual, typical brain the size of a planet, genius level of intelligence. And he is involved in a thing called the Universal State of the Earth. He, like Glenn Martin, wants a sort of world federation of nations to come into being. And he promulgated and wrote the Universal Constitution of Earth from his base in Athens later that year, which I give the text here in the book. So you've got several rival constitutions for Earth. Kondrashin is as a typical Russian intellectual. You have to read it. It's a masterpiece of philosophical, dense writing. Okay, then we had, so I went back to the castle in Scotland where I was based, Castle of the Muses on Loch Goil, watching the British nuclear submarines going up and down on budgets of billions. And here's the philosophers of the planet working on a shoestring, trying to save the planet. It's ever been that way. And I came up with this idea to have an Interfaith Peace Treaty, Like, what's the point going to all these conferences, declarations, everyone's doing them, but surely we need something a bit more than that. We need an actual treaty. We need formally the faiths of the world, the churches, all of them, the different branches of Islam, different branches of Buddhism, all the different types of religion, to sign a peace treaty that they will no longer fight and kill each other. I was involved with the Druid community all this time of Ireland and Britain, and I am the peace Druid of Europe and Britain. And I feel very strongly that because the Druids were the peacemakers of the Celtic tradition, that's why we accepted Christianity, because it seemed to offer peace. So, we've got to deliver on this, is my position. And that means every single religious leader, from the shamans of the Amazon jungle tribes up to the Pope or the Archbishop of Canterbury or the Queen, or whatever, they're all faith leaders as far as I can see. And they're all leaves of one giant tree. And we need to have them working for peace. And so that's why I wrote the Interfaith Peace Treaty, and I opened it for signature, and lots of people have signed. In my naivety, I thought we'd have about 2 million signatures within a couple of years and have a launch event in Jerusalem. But no, I still want to, I think 3 million people should sign that document, and then we'll have the launch event in Jerusalem. So there's a challenge to everyone listening to this talk, sign it yourself and get 100 friends to. I give the text here in the book, and it's also got its own website.